Okay, we are live and ready when you are, Madam Chair.
Okay, this is the Seldovia City Council Priorities Retreat / work session. Today's Thursday, November 10th. It's going to be, the time is 3:08. Okay. Now, the facilitator, that's,
Yes, I'm sorry to inform the group that the facilitator had to cancel last minute. And so Rachel and myself will take it and hopefully lead you through this successfully.
okay, the objective of the retreat to review the Seldovia City Council's top 5 values as identified in December 2021 and set Seldovia City Council priorities for calendar year 2023 in order to ensure city resources are used efficiently to provide high-quality services to Seldovia citizens. Council members will be identified as council champions for the body's priorities. Okay, we've called a meeting to order. We've already done that. Do we? So the first thing is welcome, introductions, and warming up. Rachel.
Thank you, Chair Sweat. So this is an exercise that the council has now done. This will be our 3rd time where we've come together so that council as a body can workshop the priorities for the upcoming calendar year. So the idea of a council retreat is the council as the policymakers for the city who direct the resources of the city are not only giving direction to staff by establishing essentially your main goals for the city for the upcoming year. You're also sharing with the public and giving the public a clear perspective or view of how the council is directing the city and the city's resources. So our first year, I believe, went through an exercise of talking about pivotal moments in Soldovia's history. Last year, we did something with the body where we established the Seldovia City Council's top 5 values for Seldovia. And so that is something that we're going to actually work on for this first part of the retreat. I'm going to turn it over to City Clerk Gagel, where she will review the council's top 5 values that you established last year. And we're essentially doing a temperature check of how does the council think we are upholding those values that were identified. And then as a segue from that, we're going to go over the community meeting that occurred last night up at the SOC, where we got such incredible feedback from Soldovians, not just city, but like all of Seldovia, about things that they think are strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for Seldovia. And so perhaps there's a layover or crossover between what the community identified last night and the values the council has in place. But the idea is that after council gets an opportunity to learn a little bit more about what the community came up with last night, it can come into consideration as you're developing the priorities for calendar year 2023. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Heidi to lead us through the values.
Yes, thank you. So last year, if you remember, we did have an exercise and we discussed overall values set by the council for the community, and that will be on page 3, the values that were produced. The original was scenic nature and beauty, which is protecting natural resources, recreation, providing access to natural resources, small city with community services available, or sustainable economy, and community lifestyle off the road system or more remote lifestyle. And lastly, number 5, community sense of involvement, volunteerism, unity, close-knit community. And then those were evolved or amended to the 5 below: scenic nature and beauty, which demonstrates commitment to protect to the protection of natural resources, recreational opportunities based on immediate access to natural resources, small city equipped by the community to provide essential services that support a sustainable economy, remote lifestyle off the road system, and close-knit community that thrives on volunteerism, unity, and a sense of involvement. These values have been used in places such as a website, documents, public outreach, and marketing efforts. The question here today is, do these values still align with council's, with the overall council's goals? Are they still presenting what you guys would like to present, or would you like to offer any amendments to them?
Open it up for discussion. Anyone like to comment on that?
And Heidi, I'm thinking too, if the council just wants to take a moment and review the 5 values that were established last year, this could be a good time to go over what the community came up with last night, and maybe that'll also help with the alignment of their top values.
Sure. So we did discuss this at last night's meeting, along with some more information that was provided. Your guys' priorities, which is on the following page, was provided to the community meeting, and towards the back of the packet, the last couple of pages, we provided a citizen survey and responses to the people at the meeting last night in a compiled document for the SWOT analysis. So it was compiled in the SWOT format. So those would be really great to review if you haven't already. Those were provided based on those surveys that we received back. And then we held a really great session or exercise on the strengths, opportunities, weaknesses, and threats for Seldovia. And those results, I'm sorry that they're not numbered, but it's page 17 of the packet. So just a couple before the end are provided in this, or have been provided to the council. So with that, the strengths, top 3 strengths that really came out of the discussion last night were creative, generous citizens of Seldovia, new families and kids, natural beauty lends itself to outdoor tourism, or ease of access of recreation in the marine environment. But I would like to just explain how we got the top. So a quick overview of the exercise. We provided everybody with sticky notes and the examples that are in this packet, and asked people to just think through on their own or together in a group what they thought were the strengths, opportunities, weaknesses, and threats for the community, and then place those on the sheets of paper provided to the room that labeled with the same topic. And then once placed there, then everybody reviewed those suggestions provided by the group and had stickers that they could mark, the 2 for each category, and then an extra 2 for things that really they really wanted to add an extra vote to. So it was just a way of showing what the most what items were really meant the most to the group. So for strengths, you could see there was 8 stickers, so 8 people potentially that provided that creative, generous citizens of Seldovia is just a really top strength for the community. The new families and kids had 7, and then the natural beauty lends itself to outdoor tourism, or ease of access for the recreation in the marine environment. Both had a couple that came to 5. For opportunities, you can see that tourism was a big deal. There was a couple of different suggestions: tourism expansion to shoulder season or year round, shoulder season events, marketing, bring people in fall and spring, market Seldovia as a place for work, meditative well-being retreats that had 11 altogether. City, SBT, and SNA to get together, make things happen, and do what they said for the betterment of the people living here had 8. Vocational school locations, jobs, growth, and education had 4. So the weaknesses followed kind of a similar trend. It was lack of housing. People's attitude was 12. Lack of people's attitudes to new change is 7. Lack of economic diversity to contribute to long-term sustainability had 4. For threats, it was continued increase of absentee home ownership. Absentee homeowners who lack awareness of and lack community resources had 5. Small workforce 4. And current level of reliance of outside food resources 4. And I'm sorry, Ashley, I'll make sure to get this to you. There is a copy on the Facebook page, but I didn't think about sending this to you beforehand. Really though, I hope you guys all have a chance to review it and look over it, but there was definitely some running themes, and I'd say under strengths, there was really more of a focus on people and environment. Opportunities was marketing, networking and partnerships. Weaknesses is housing and infrastructure, and threats is housing and resources. So hopefully though that input can help guide some of the discussion today.
Okay, thank you, Heidi. So again, does anyone want to make a comment or have any thoughts?
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Harmony.
I'm kind of sad that Jeremiah's not here, but maybe Rachel could, or I guess even Vivian. But Rachel, I was just wondering, from a city council standpoint, from a city standpoint, what can we do to address the housing situation? I feel like that could be a really sticky situation for administrative, from an administrative standpoint. Would we be what would our steps be in, I don't know, to help the housing in our community? Sorry, I'm distracted.
No problem. So in thinking about the feedback that the community shared at the meeting last night, if the council wanted to prioritize generating housing or trying to encourage the development of more housing in Seldovia, there are a variety of things that council could put forth. I mean, you could use city land as a instigator for a developer. Hey, we have this piece of property. We're willing to work with a developer or another organization where perhaps the city still maintains control of the land, or as a way to reduce development costs, because the cost of raw land can sometimes increase development. So that could be one offer or one opportunity, or perhaps the city sells or disposes of the land at less than fair market value. That's another way to support housing. So as long as it was an agreement with the developer, that's how land could be used. Those are just a couple options. The city and borough of Juneau a few years ago offered a grant to a certain amount of folks who got building permits through to add an accessory dwelling unit to their property. So that's another way where the city try to incentivize homeowners to convert basements or convert, floors of their home, or do something to where you create another apartment, a separate unit that could be rented out for people. So those are just a couple ideas off the top of my head. I mean, another option is the city could approach an organization or a corporation that has land already and say, hey, if you develop this property, perhaps the city could look into working with the borough to reduce the assessment value or reduce property taxes on your property. In lieu of you developing it, you won't be assessed the full value for X amount of years. So Those are just a few things that have come off the top of my head, Councilmember Peyton. But it's definitely something that the municipalities in Alaska have done throughout the state, because it's a need not just unique to Soldovia, but especially communities that land is a very coveted and limited resource. And if that was something that the council wanted to see, I mean, you could be as specific as saying, hey, we want to evaluate the use of city land to incentivize housing. I mean, you could have a priority as specific as that, or it could be, you know, a priority of exploring different manners of which the city could follow to encourage affordable housing in Soldovia. And I know that looking at Councilmember Kennedy, this is something that he's expressed interest in, is seeing a more strategic plan for how the city manages its land and the land that we currently have to incentivize either development or assisting with our deficit. So there's definitely interest outside of you, Councilmember Peyton. I hope that helps.
Yeah, I like, thank you, Rachel. I like the idea of incentivizing people who already live and exist here and developing their properties to include those accessory dwellings. I was wondering if we could also incentivize people who own buildings along the main street or who have buildings that have kind of fallen into disrepair, like maybe reach out to those people and incentivize them to turn those over and make them livable dwellings, like modernize them in similar ways. I don't know what that would look like, but I am looking at 3 empty buildings right now that that's a lost opportunity that I think the city should start considering those types of motivations as well.
You bet. I mean, that is something that could be a part of the housing discussion. I know that at least in Main Street, there's some restrictions through zoning of what exactly can be constructed in that area of Solovia, but there's definitely ways that cities in the past have worked with businesses and property owners to encourage housing.
Okay, anything else, anything else, Harmony? Does that answer your question?
No, I think that covers my question. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make a statement that the housing situation has been on our radar for many, many, many years. And I guess we've never really come up with any solid solutions, you know, how we want to tackle that. If we want to tackle that as a city, become landlords, I'm not sure about that. or yeah, no, it's all about the money as far as I'm concerned. Okay, anybody else have anything they want to comment on?
Councilmember Smith.
Go ahead.
I actually have had a lot of conversations with Rachel and others about, you know, my thoughts and, you know, some type of development opportunities for, you know, affordable housing. And that's one of the reasons that I fought the sale of any city property to the borough. It's not so much that I'm not against this selling the property and being able to pay our debt. I'm absolutely for that. But when it comes to the waterfront property, I'd like to see us retain it for better opportunities like hotel or something down the road. It may not happen in our lifetime, but somewhere down the road. Okay, that being said, we do have parcels that are off the front street that I think are attractable with the right written statements, might be attractable to developers. The situation right now is we're facing a pretty tough economy with high interest rates, so it's not real appealing right now. But I can tell you on a personal note, as a business owner, We brought 3 people up from out of state, and I found my daughter sleeping in a tent in the rain all summer because there's no place for her. So we're going to be looking at changing our business practices and doing something different. It's just not feasible for our own family to have to do that. So I think there are some large landowners in this community. They're not very popular, some of them. But there's still opportunities. I don't know what the answer is. I'm pretty new here, but this is my first councilman's retreat, so I've been kind of quiet because I don't, just sitting here looking at the original, goals, I understand all of that, but I don't see where there's any goal to make it better, so that we have jobs for our kids and a place for our kids to live, and for the younger people that are not retired, like myself, and someplace for them to be. So incentives for additional housing or rooms to rent in existing homes, I'd be all for that. Some type of incentives for full-time residents rather than just a cottage for 1 or 2 weekends out of the year. I would be interested. Is that possible to maybe, the rates for that? I don't know exactly. I think we'd have to take a look at the parcels that are off the waterfront. But I've had conversations in the time that I've been here about people that would be interested in building here. So I think we could find it. I just think right now it's going to be tough. A lot of people are waiting to see what's going to happen here in the next year. We don't even know. The rumor has it we're not even going to have fuel in the next 3 months. So it's pretty scary, So, but then anyway, that's my thoughts on the housing. Anyway, it's definitely something that's a real high priority. I think it needs to be a priority for all of us. And I don't see any other way than putting it out there that we have a piece of property available for this type of development and maybe we could offer some kind of incentives. I wouldn't be interested in a reduced price of the value. I'd like to see us get whatever the property's worth, but maybe some tax incentives for them to come in here and do that, but that way the city still gets their money for the property and, anyway, that's all I got.
Thank you, John. Anyone else? Does Ashley have her hand up? Or what is that?
I do, yes.
Okay.
I just wanted to piggyback on what both Councilmember Payton and Kennedy were saying. When I looked at our goals as well, housing was definitely one that popped out. And I think what Councilmember Kennedy brought up about kind of our economic forecast, it is a tough time for what we would want to have happen with those parcels to happen potentially. But I think it's a great opportunity to get that on our list as a priority and start building a plan so that when it's the right time or the right person steps in, we're ready to take that on and have that available to move forward for using one of our parcels to work on affordable housing.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, then we'll move on to, do we need a break? Okay, we'll move on to council discussion on individual proposals.
Wonderful.
Yeah, okay. Do you want to take that, Rachel?
You bet.
Okay.
So on page 4 of the packet, you'll see our most up-to-date priorities for calendar year 2022. And so they're ranked large, medium, and small. And the idea is there's only so much time, there's only so many resources, there's only so many funds that we can use. And so by the council doing its best to steer the resources of the city by establishing priorities for the next year, it then makes it more tangible for staff to then accomplish those priorities on council's behalf. And so on page 4, you'll see the priorities that have been in place. And then starting on page 5 of your packet it's kind of like a report card or status update of the progress that's been made on those priorities. And just to go through some of them really quick, if we were to think about council's top large number 1 priority of improving city finances overall, including lost revenue and the Soldovia Permanent Fund, council has made huge progress on this. The city has made huge progress. So council hired Alaska Permanent Capital Management Company to manage the majority of the permanent fund. And so the goal is in 10 years, not touching those funds, just letting them accrue interest, which becomes principal at the end of the year. In 10 years, the city will have doubled its permanent fund investment, which the original amount was $500,000. $1 million in 10 years seems like that would be an incredible success, because those funds are restricted for use of land acquisition as well as matching grant capital outlays, it says in code. So that's huge that we have that in place with APCM. We also did things like install signs through town, letting folks know, hey, this is a fee area. We put pay boxes up, and those have been working. People do drop off fees in those pay boxes. And now people are aware that those areas have associated fees. The finance officer has been doing a wonderful job working with staff to improve collections on delinquent accounts. So those are just some examples of lost revenue. And then there's more examples here, like the harbor rate study that was developed by the harbor master, and the harbor master's assistant Radzi was really insightful on how Soldovia's harbor rates compare to other harbors throughout Alaska. So again, many examples there. The second large priority was Jackaloff maintenance and upgrades. So we haven't made significant maintenance on Jackaloff Bay Dock. However, we're still continuing to have the discussion, at least, of how to move forward with maintaining this asset that's it's reaching the end of its useful life. It's located outside of city limits, and we don't necessarily have reserves to take care of the dock. So what are some things, though, that we have done for Jackaloff? We did pursue the Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity Planning Grant. We did not receive the grant this year, but we did receive a rating of acceptable, and we're encouraged to apply again next year. We've had several dignitaries, from Senator Murkowski to Jill Schaefer from the governor's office to Commissioner Anderson, come out and actually walk the dock too, so they could see what Soldovia is working with. Both the city and Soldovia Village Tribe entered into a regional partnership, and both entities identified marine transportation like Jackaloff as a regional priority for Soldovia. So those are just some examples of how we've made progress there. When it comes to leveraging the American Rescue Plan Act funds for major capital projects, the first tranche of the ARPA funding that we received was a little over $33,000. $15,000 of that was put towards hiring a grant writer, CRW Engineering, and they compiled a report for the city of how the city can pursue the opportunities that are not only coming out of the bipartisan infrastructure law, but other ways that we can leverage resources to make improvements on water and sewer. And then the other part of that first tranche was used to make improvements to the multipurpose building, like replacing the windows in the chief of police office and replacing all the windows eventually in this space. So that's just an example there. And additionally, although it's not related to leveraging the ARPA funding, because the city developed a capital improvement program for the first time last year, that actually helped us communicate the city's needs and provide a tool, like a communication tool. And through that, and working with Senator Murkowski's office, we're currently positioned to receive a little over $1.2 million in appropriations, congressionally designated spending. So that was really helpful. It's a huge accomplishment when it comes to thinking about capital improvement projects. We have accomplished the land use management plan. That was a priority council had. We have secured at least the partnership to bring a village public safety officer to Soldovia. So that was accomplished, so to say. When it comes to the value added building on your council meeting this upcoming Monday, there'll be an expression of interest for council to consider. That's similar to what we did for Jackaloff Bay Dock. So rather than going through the whole process of drafting a request for proposals and having all of our terms and everything fleshed out, we're just making it a little bit more of an inviting process so that folks can write a letter of interest outlining what they would intend to do with the building, what their resources are for using it, how they would like to use it. Do they want to use the whole building or just a portion, the surrounding property? So that's something that's going to be on Monday's meeting. And we've had work sessions to talk about the value added building. And so that also keeps it fresh in everyone's mind. And then the smaller priorities that were listed are, and this is actually not a small priority, but we've been putting a small amount of time towards it, is improving broadband internet capability in Soldovia through partnerships, by receiving presentations, by sending staff to the broadband conference that Senator Sullivan put on. When it comes to beautification and retaining small town charm, we had our 60th anniversary as a first-class city celebration. That was huge. It brought together the Soldovia Village Tribe and the Chamber to work with the city and put that event on. We had Senator Murkowski come. So that's a part of the small town charm of coming together as a community to celebrate 60 years of having a first-class city status. We do work with the Arts Council. The Arts Council actually is a city organization that helps provide the arts on our behalf. So that's been another way of accomplishing this priority. And we've tried to do grants. Public Works has been cleaning up public property. With the passage of the ballot proposition, we now have a road grader that will help us, just like the older road grader, maintain our roads. And that, in a sense, helps with beautification. And then moving on to marketing and public outreach. We are a chamber member. We were able to work with the governor to reappropriate the $25,000 in SMOLT grant funds to use for marketing and outreach of the Soldovia Slough. So that's underway. We formed a partnership with KBBI. That was a priority council had set in 2021. And we accomplished that. So through that partnership, we've gotten a few stories about Soldovia out on the radio. So that's been great. Continued ferry Testamina replacement advocacy. This is something, as Chair Sweat, as the Soldovia Ferry godmother, has helped the community out with, is really elevating the importance and the community's desire to ensure a sustainable ferry schedule for Soldovia. So we had over 150 signatures collected on a community letter that was submitted as public comment to DOT. We secured a letter from the Homer City Council advocating for the importance of the ferry system to Soldovia. We now have beanies with the Testamina on them. So they were initially gifts to say thank you to staff who helped support the ferry system, but now members of the community can also buy beanies, and that shows support for the ferry system. So I share all this because that's where we're at with your current priorities. And these, of course, are adaptable and can change year to year, but it's just to show how we've been aligning where the city's been steering its compass to accomplish the will of council. So when you guys think of what you want your calendar year priorities for 2023 to be, you can see that there's still work being done on some of the priorities on here. And that's okay. They can change, but it just means that we shift our focus elsewhere. So if there are ideas that you liked in terms of priorities and how we've been making progress on these initiatives. Some of them can change. You can move them around in terms of level of effort or get rid of them altogether. But this exercise is best when the priority is specific. So the more specific it is, the more helpful it is to make sure that we accomplish it. So I don't know if council wants to start and looking at page 4 of the packet, which is just the priorities as they currently stand. And that'll kind of be a guide for how you want to adapt them for the next year. But that's an approach. And then provided in the packet were worksheets. These were provided to council a couple years ago just to help frame or think about the priority, because even if it's this really amazing dream, the chances of it happening are slim to none if it takes $1 million to do, or you need 30 people to accomplish it. That's harder. So when you think of the priorities, the large ones, they don't just happen or get accomplished overnight. It can take years. So just throwing that out there too. And perhaps Chair Sweat, we can start with the large priorities and thinking about 2023 and if council wants to see any changes there or make any modifications to that first row.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Rachel. That's what I was thinking. Like Rachel said, page 4 are our city council priorities for the calendar year 2022. So Rachel went into what we've accomplished, what still needs to be accomplished. So how do you guys want to do this? Do you want to start with the large priorities, take a look at the 3 we've got and see if you want to change them, or how you want to go about prioritizing those? So if somebody wants to start,
Councilmember Sweat,
go ahead.
can we start with the large priority? I think
Yes, I
that'd be
think
the
we should.
easiest ones for
We
us.
should go,
Yeah.
take a look at them. Oh, as you're talking about the large, maybe you want to move one up, maybe you want to move one down,
Yeah,
or whatever.
I don't know how the rest of the council feels, but I think for the most part, the large priorities are still remain. The only question that I have really is number 2 there, jackaloff maintenance and upgrades. It appears to me that we're kind of in the process of maybe more replacement rather than spending a lot of money on its current situation. And I'm not the guy to put the proper verbiage in it, but I'm just wondering if that might be maybe reworded just slightly. But I think the improving city finances overall, the number 1 priority, I think we need to continue with that plan and until we at least get ourselves in a better situation. And that's all I have on that.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else want to comment on that? Large priority, number 1, does everybody agree that should stay the way it is? Anybody? All right, then I guess we'll leave that as number 1.
And Councilmember Sweat, can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
So for priority 1, we have already accomplished amending the code regarding the permanent fund to make better investments.
Oh, yeah,
So we can take that.
scratch
Off.
that one. Okay.
And then I think the title for that could be improving city finances overall, closing the general fund deficit and Soldovia small boat harbor deficit, and adding money or adding contributions to reserves. So city savings.
Okay.
So that's just a suggestion, but if you wanted to make that more specific, that's what I'd recommend. And then
That sounds good.
in terms of council champions, we have Nathan, Rojas, and Swick. I know Councilmember Rojas couldn't be here with us today, but Councilmember Swick, are you still interested in being the council champion on this topic?
Can she not hear us?
Well, we will just carry on and then we can update, we can go back to that
Okay.
section.
Let me just ask, John, do you want to be one of the council champions for that?
I don't have any issue with it. In fact, I do like some of Rachel's thoughts there.
Yeah.
She's a little bit more involved in this every day, and I was kind of hoping to hear some input there, but she's right. We have already set our permanent fund. And maybe we could look at closing the deficit a little this year. So.
Heidi, do you have all those suggestions that Rachel made?
I think Rachel's working on notes as well, so we've got it covered.
Okay, great. So moving on then to number 2, which is jack-off maintenance and upgrades. And I have a question. Please refresh my memory because of course I cannot remember. Did we actually do the vote yet? Remember, we were moving that vote to October or till the end of summer to really decide what we were going to do, whether we were going to take the dock out or whether we were going to continue with doing maintenance on it and keeping it. Did we ever make that final vote?
I remember that conversation and
Yeah.
I've got the same question.
I don't
Yeah.
think we ever did because we ran into the issue with the tidelands, then the uplands, then this and that with that. So I don't think we've ever officially had that vote. I think before we decide on maintenance and upgrades, we need to decide the original discussion of with what we're going to do with Jackaloft Dock. Don't you think?
So because it kind of, I can't honestly recall at this point where we're at. I believe we did make a motion that we would do this, and if that doesn't work out, then we would do that. And I think it was option A, which is doing minimal maintenance and status quo.
Status quo.
So I believe that we did make a call that was our action, and my internet isn't working for some reason, so
Right, but again, I could have sworn that was only until
Yeah.
October or till the end of summer or something. Maybe we could get clarification on this before because we can do we can make the priority thing at any time. So we might want to put that on the hold or however you want to say it, that we get some clarification on that. Maybe ask Jeremiah, he might remember or not. But anyway, I know we've discussed so much about it that I personally cannot remember what was ultimately decided.
Councilmember Sweat.
Go ahead.
I remember there was conversation. I can remember part of my thoughts on that. Not necessarily everybody else's, and that's really not what's important, but I do remember we talking about waiting to see what the outcome on the upland lease was going to
Yes,
be.
and I think
And which now we see that that's probably going to be held off a couple of years, which, and my thought at that time was, I didn't know if I had enough stomach to leave that dock in there another winter and take the risk.
Right.
That may not be popular. That's just my thoughts. That doesn't mean that I'm interested in abandoning Jackaloft. The community says they'd like to keep it. And if we can find grant funding, I'm all about it. But I'm very concerned about our liability out there.
well, yeah, and I think it was just basically what to do with
Right.
the physical dock that's there now. So let's try to get some clarification if everyone's agreeable at I don't know, maybe the next meeting or the meeting after that. And then we can, if we need to make another decision, I think we should make it. Oh, there you are.
I'm
You have
here.
Yeah, okay. Do you have something to say?
Wait, what is the question? Sorry, I had people dealing with
Okay, well,
Jackaloff.
yeah, what I had said was because the priority originally was Jackaloff maintenance and upgrades. And then we had a lot of discussion about that. And the question I asked was whether we did the final vote on taking that dock out or not. Because I remember it was summertime when we discussed it, and I thought we were going to make a decision after the summer, and then the stuff came up with the tidelands and the uplands, and I think it just kind of got pushed to the back burner. Do you remember anything about that?
Yeah, I don't. Well, hold on. I do. We decided to wait until what, this October or November or whatever, which is now, and we have been discussing it.
Right, but I don't think we made the final vote. That's what I'm getting at.
No.
Okay, that's what I thought. So
Decision and-
I suggested then we get the information that we need at the next council meeting and think about making a decision like we said we were going to.
Right. Yeah, because we're discussing signing the lease in the next meeting, correct?
Yep, that's
Besides-
on, yep, that's Mondays.
Okay, but can we, is there enough time to discuss the rest of it, or should we wait until, well, it doesn't matter whether that conversation is going to happen or not. That's not going to depend on anything that we're doing physically with the dog. So yeah, maybe after the 14th council meeting, we could get some info.
You
So
bet.
then we could wait with this second priority until we get that information.
And when you say wait, do you mean like just leave it as is for now, or do you want to take it off?
Well, no, I'd say, could we leave it?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's just leave it.
Councilmember Sweat.
Yes.
I think what she's trying to say is we could leave it until we have a quorum, much bigger group. Everybody's here, we.
Well, yeah, and we get a little bit. more
Maybe-
information. Yeah,
Maybe even the first meeting of December.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, can I?
Yep.
Yeah,
yes.
go ahead, Jen.
Well, I just feel like if we're just talking priority list, then yes, it is a priority of making a decision, not so much. We don't list it as a priority to pull it, more as to
Okay.
move
Yeah,
forward in this, whatever that may be. It obviously needs to remain a priority.
Yeah, right. So we'll just leave it as is for now.
Maybe wording different. I don't know. Yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
it needs to be down there.
Councilmember Sweat,
Okay, yes.
Swick, Jennifer, when I initially brought this up, I was just questioning whether we should maybe reword it rather than maintenance and upgrades, maybe something to do with replacement, because that appears to be the direction we're headed. That's all I was suggesting, just for clarification.
Well, yeah, and once we get decide what we're going to do, then we can continue to make it a priority, but just, yeah, take the maintenance and upgrades out of it. So, okay, is that clear? Kind of, sort of.
Yes, and I wanted to just add to that this is really like the beginning of the discussion on the priorities for the next year, but they will still have the process of going through a resolution and a meeting to be discussed and approved, because this is a work session, so you can't take action in a work
Right,
session.
right.
So if there are unsolved areas during this discussion, another meeting or work session can be held, or it can be finalized during the discussion for
Yeah.
the resolution.
Okay.
There'll be more opportunities.
Can we
Or-
just leave it vague and say the future of Jackaloff Dock?
Yeah, that is totally doable. The future of Jackaloff.
Yeah, that would be good for now.
That's
And Councilmember Swick, are you still a champion of improving city finances and the future of Jackaloff?
Yeah, that's fine.
And we can do a question mark next to Vivian's name and ask her when we make contact with her.
You bet.
And then can I just, for clarification, is the future of Jackaloff as in the area or Jackaloff Bay, or do you want it specific to the dock? You guys want to leave it broad to just the future of Jackaloff Bay dock?
I think that sounds good to me right now because we don't really know what exactly we're going to do.
So just the
So-
future of Jackaloff.
Future, yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
Without going into, a whole bunch of other stuff. Okay, moving on then to the large priority number 3. Does that want to stay as is? Do you want to do something different with it or what? Comments, anyone?
And just to give feedback, we have used almost all of the ARPA funding that the city was allocated from the feds. So there may be a little bit left of the first tranche because the first tranche, there's 15,000 of that 33,000 set aside for the grant writing services. And then the improvements to this building, it's a little over 10,000 there. So there may be between $5,000 to $8,000 left from the first tranche, but otherwise all of the ARPA funding has been spent or is committed.
Okay, thanks, Rachel.
You bet.
And in looking at this, I would make a suggestion to move, because all these things here on the large priority number 3 are very important. The capital projects such as water and sewer, obviously, it has to be important to us. We can either leave, we've already got the broadband as a small, well, we can either leave it or take it out because we've got it as a small priority anyway. And the Saldovia Safe Road programs and the dam and reservoir, those are very important to this city and to the residents. I think we ought to move that one to number 2 priority and move the future of Jackaloff to number 3, my opinion. Any comments?
I think that's a great idea. I was actually just about to chime in about kind of moving a couple of those things around, since Jackaloff is in a different place right now where we're not 100% sure what it is we're going to need to do, but we know there's going to be action needed, but we're in the middle of taking action on that 3rd priority. So it feels like it's better to move that to 2nd.
Everybody else have a comment? Okay, then what about the broadband services that are in that? Can we take that out since we've got it for a small priority, number 1 small priority? Are they both the same or are they different? I can't remember, different things about the broadband.
I believe they're the same.
Okay,
But because the 3rd large priority was about thinking of ways we could take the ARPA money to help with that, but we instead
but-
used the ARPA money to primarily help with this building, water and sewer, and to help balance the budget with revenue replacement.
okay, so the number 3 priority should just be generalized then, attempting to get grants or whatever for the water, sewer, and the roads and all that then. Heidi, whichever way you want to take the broadband out of it then. And however you want to word it properly.
So you get
It should
Just-
move to
we
number
could-
2. And
yeah,
Jackaloff should move to number 3.
right. And then just remove leverage ARPA and just
Yes.
funding
Funding, yes.
funding for major capital
Yes.
projects. And then if broadband stays in there, then you can remove it from small, because it is a big, it's going to take probably a lot of resources.
Okay,
Or
well,
if
we
you
can-
want to take it out of there and leave it on small. But I could see how it could appropriately fit into that large priority, seeing as it's years out with this potential BEAD funding and HEA's seeking funding. There's a lot of big organizations seeking
is a-
funding, but it's gonna take a lot.
And it is a huge
Okay.
thing for especially the businesses.
Yeah,
So do you guys want to leave it in there, in the wording, the broadband, and take it? Or do we want to take it out of the small, just do away with the small
Councilmember Sweat, I think we ought to take it out of the small and leave it in there.
and leave it?
And then it maybe instead of ARPA funding, maybe pursue all other sources of funding for those.
That's what I said.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I think it's still a big priority. The only question I had is I thought that's what HEA was trying to do, which you just mentioned. And I don't know what the ETA was on that, but it's,
I
few
think
years
that was
out.
way down the
Yeah,
road. That was
yeah.
way down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was the same thing though, right?
right, basically.
Yeah.
right, so sorry, so yes, they're waiting to hear on congressional appropriations,
Yeah.
just like we are for our water
Yeah.
and sewer. And then there are other opportunities as well that may be possible for that project. It's pretty huge nationwide right now. I was in a call this morning where they were talking about, it's still being a goal. I was in a call with the federal government with some representatives from the federal government about that. They're going full steam trying to get internet into everybody's homes. So it's a big goal, but there's a lot of things coming in the future for it.
Right.
And something too with HEA is they're putting it in their secondary power cable. But something they say is that you then need the funding or support to help bring it into homes and businesses too. So that's where, Heidi attended a broadband conference, or I think that's what BEAD is. That's helping with the middle mile. Is that what that's called?
There's a lot of different sections to the program, but BEAD is through the state has applied for BEAD and there'll be funding through that as well. So there's a lot of components. The call I was on this morning was about the Affordable Connectivity Program, which is for bigger organizations to be able to provide the service at a reasonable price to people. I mean, it's a lot of moving parts.
So
Well,
Council-
I hope those parts move pretty quickly before the mayor has a coronary.
So Mayor Sweat or Councilmember Sweat, I think it should stay up
Yeah.
in number one. And I think it really relates to our ability to be able to communicate to the world. And it's important. I had a conversation this morning with a new member in town, and they are working from home electronically. And, I think we're going to see more and more of that.
Okay, so is everybody in? Oh, Jennifer, you have your hand up?
So I feel like this number 3 is really throwing us all off on, because this was an idea of using that. This was about the ARPA funding, not about these projects. I think that needs to kind of go away altogether. And not that these things don't need to be addressed. I feel like a lot of stuff needs to be moved around, like my background noise. Let me look at here. So we have improved broadband on there already. We need to move that off of small. And if we're trying to get on board with this whole KPED everything, and maybe that just stays as a priority itself, or the water sewer, or the sewer, more like it, I guess, is we're moving forward with trying to get the sewer, whatever VSW is doing.
No.
I think this whole,
No, not me. No.
go away. This whole leveraging these fundings for all of these projects, we need all of these projects listed on here, just not together like this. Because when we go down to the medium, I'm assuming this annexation is going to go away. There's rooms to put all of these things on here still, and not just lumped together saying we're trying to get funding. Well, we need funding for everything. We can't just say we're going to look for funding for all these projects, split them up. They're all going to require funding. Anyway, if that made sense, sorry.
Well, that's true. And I agree with you up to a point, but all these things, in my opinion, are very important to us. And we could separate them all out, but we'd have to have 3 other pages. So I think that was the whole purpose of grouping some of these together originally for this ARPA funding, but now we've just revamped it and said, trying to get funding for these particular projects, which I think are one is as important as the other. That's why I suggested making it number 2, but it's whatever you guys want to do.
Chair Sweat, could I make a suggestion?
Go ahead. Yeah.
I can see what Councilmember Swick is saying, because that is the intent of what that priority was leveraging ARPA funding, and we've already done that. So check,
Mhm.
kind of mission accomplished there. I think because the more specific they are, the more likely we're able to focus and accomplish the mission, so to speak. So what we've done, at least in the past, is you can make little notes, like you'll see on the top priority for improving city finances, little asterisks saying developing sustainable budget, amending the code. So perhaps for this top 3rd priority, you can just choose one of those things, and then we can list those other capital project needs underneath. So that way we accomplish that first capital project, and then council can say, okay, what's the next big capital thing we want to focus on? And if I were to give a recommendation here, of course, this is a council priority, but just throwing this out there. If the city is successful in getting the appropriations of a little over $1.2 million, we're going to have to match that by 20%. It's a requirement of the grant that 80%, that's what we requested from the federal government, but then 20% plus any other fluctuations in price, because inflation and supply chain and all of that kind of stuff. So if I were to make a suggestion here, because it says water and sewer, we're hoping to improve the Block Street sewer line and replace the raw water transmission line. So perhaps for this 3rd priority, top priority, it could be secure the 20% local match for the Block Street sewer and raw water transmission line projects. So that could be like that 3rd large priority, because that'll be interesting to figure out how we're going to do that. And then underneath, but within that same little box, you can still keep broadband services, Seldovia Safe Roads program, and the dam/reservoir. That way we're doing something like Councilmember Swick said of breaking it up, but we're not forgetting what's already been put there. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that sounds good, but I think we should move it to number 2.
Oh, number 2.
Yeah,
Sorry, I
okay.
see number 3.
And move the future of Jackaloff to number 3. Yeah, that makes more sense separating it out like that. Then.
So I see a thumbs up from Councilmember Kennedy. Does that sound okay over in Zoom land to everybody?
Yes, that sounds great, because as I was looking at that and what this worksheet's supposed to help us with, as Rachel said, where we're trying to be very specific, it kind of goes to the basis of goal setting, where one goal should have one specific point so that you've been able to hit that goal. And where we are with number 3, as she said, you got the check mark because it had to do with that funding. And so now we know those projects all need to happen. So I think this is kind of a sneaky way of having a check mark on the top, but then we are reminded that these are all still a large priority.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have our large priorities then.
What
Do
a
we?
horizon Seldovia has ahead. That these are 3 really big priorities, but I just rest assured, Council of the City's already done so much to make progress.
Okay,
on
let me go over them again. So number 1 for the large priority is improving city finances overall, including lost revenue and the Seldovia Permanent Fund. That wording is going to stay the same?
No, that wording will change. So we have
Okay.
improving city finances overall, closing the general fund and
Oh,
Seldovia small
okay.
boat harbor deficit, making contributions to city reserves, and that's the major maintenance and repair fund and the permanent fund. And then lost revenue,
Okay,
and then developing sustainable budget, flow of money in and out can stay on there too.
okay. All right, so that's going to be number one then.
Yep, you got
The
it.
second large priority will be what we just discussed. Heidi, do you want to read it back as to how it's going to be worded or?
Yes, so I
Okay.
have pursue sources secure funding for the 20% local match for the Block Street sewer project and the raw water transmission line project. And then below that, still for major capital projects, funding would be water and sewer broadband services, Sildovia Safe Roads Program, and the dam reservoir, just so we don't lose track of them.
Okay, and then number 3 will be future Jackaloff dock. So is everybody in agreement to
The
The future of Jackaloff.
the future of Jackaloff dock? Yeah. So is everybody in agreement
Yes.
with those? Okay. Moving on to the medium priorities. For number 1, we have secure a VPSO. Number 2 is the value added building, and number 3 is evaluate feasibility of Mountain Brook Heights subdivision annexation proposal. Okay. So what do you guys want to see for medium priorities? Number 1,
Councilmember Sweat,
go ahead.
I'll stick my neck out. I'm a little fast. I actually wanted to hear what Jennifer had to say, and I see she just stuck her hand up too, but you know, the land management use plan. Rachel and I had some conversation a couple of months ago about it is a good plan, but there's no plan for what we're going to do with that. It's all, you know, it's all history, you know, thoughts of uses, you know, but what's our long-term goals for the city out 10 years, 15 years, 25 years, 50 years? You know, do we see, you know, anything like that more, I guess, my thoughts is what a community would call a master plan. You know, what's our plan out the road or down the road years from now? And was what some of my thoughts with that subdivision over here. I'm not against annexing that subdivision, but what about the issues we have with the current parcels in town that are already within the city limits that don't have water and sewer? And can they be identified? And instead of going to approval with the water resources, refresh my, what's the acronym for the organization I'm talking about? The ones that control the water and sewer with Alaska, the folks that,
Oh, the DEC.
yeah, the DEC, instead of going to the DEC for just that subdivision, what if we were to look at everything inside the city limits that where the deficiencies are, and then come up with a priority 1, 2, and 3, you know, so that we're not rewriting those proposals and engineering drawings over and over again for this individual item or this individual item. You know, to me, it would be better to come up with a more inclusive plan of the whole deal, so we're covering it all. Does that make sense?
Okay, well, I'm not understanding what you mean. So you want that to be a medium priority instead of, I was just talking about the items we have listed.
Yeah,
What do we want to do with those?
I
And
think,
then do we want something new? And just one more thing I want to say about the land management plan. That is, what we did was only phase 1. It's a work in progress. We can amend it at any time. And probably what you'd want to do is have like a workshop or something to discuss that part of the land management plan and then add it to the land management plan. Right, Heidi?
maybe Councilmember Swept, that's probably worded a little better. That's exactly what I was talking about, was maybe what's the next phase? And the work done there is fantastic. It's a good start, but where are we going, in the next 50 years? And that's all I meant by that. I appreciate the work that everybody's done there. I just think we could do more. And that's what I meant about identifying those issues when it comes to annex and other parcels, and having to deal with the organizations that we're going to have to deal with to get approval. If we know what all those others are, we can hopefully take care of them in phases or whatever. But when it comes to the VPSO, we're already there, aren't we? So that's my thoughts on that. And we're working on the value added building. So I don't know. I just think that whole area needs maybe some new ideas.
Okay, so then does that mean, Jen, go ahead. You have a question?
Yeah, because I have to run and get Clay here in a couple minutes. So are we considering VPSO checked off? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to ask. Are we, okay. Okay, thanks.
So yeah, I feel like that can go away. Good job, us. The same thing with this annexation. I think at this point, since Hugh has pulled his interest, that was a big piece of that. I think that is not really something that we need to focus our time and energy on. The value added.
So do we want to do away with that one also then?
Well, here, let me throw out I have 3 to throw out here before I gotta go for a couple minutes. I would say take that off. Thank you. I would, I think it might be a good idea to bump the broadband up into the medium, since there's a lot of movement happening with that. And I don't know if we need to make it more of a communications as a whole, since we're facing this cell tower issue. I mean, I know that's supposed to be fixed in the near future. I hope that's the case. I don't know. I mean, I'd hate for it to really come true that we all lose cell service in 2 months. So I don't know if we need to be considering that. And then we should put housing on here, exploring what our options are, what we can do, what we're able to offer. I feel like if we were to 1, 2, 3 it, I'd do 1 broadband, 2 housing, and 3 kick the value added down to 3. Those are my thoughts there. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Anybody else have any comments? Okay, so once again, did we leave the broadband on number 2 large priority in that?
It's listed as an asterisk underneath, but it is the priority itself is to secure the 20% local match for Block Street and raw water treatment. So it could be its own, because
individual,
then that
okay.
means the focus is on for both of them. And then I heard what John was saying. And so like a part of that lump, and that's, I think the vision for it moving forward was that it would be like a developmental plan, so like, how are we going to develop here? Now we know what we have, right? So how does it develop going forward? So that could be placed on there somewhere as well. Maybe if broadband is up, then
Councilmember Swept.
the developmental plan piece of the lump is below and small.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Right. That's all I was getting at, is what's our next phase for that? And I would love to be able to take that whole plan home and just sit in the evenings and read it to get familiar with it. I might have some more ideas.
Well, you
But-
go right ahead, John.
I might,
You
but
can
it's not that I want to
certainly
change anything. I just want to know the things that bother me is we've had citizens come to the council meeting and express, help to get water and sewer to their current lots in town. And I just wonder how we could solve that. That's all. And make sure it's part of that plan. That's all.
Well, no, and I'm saying that's good thought. You should do that. Okay, but for now, do we want to move the broadband? Like improve broadband internet capability to medium priority number 1? Is that what we want to do?
And if I can interrupt, and do you want that to include communications as Councilmember Swick recommended? So it could be improve broadband internet capability and communications.
Yeah, that's fine,
I'm-
however you want to word it.
If the question's to me, I'm good with that.
Would it
Absolutely.
Would it be okay to add in partnership with Soldovia Village Tribe, because we did set the regional priority to do that with them? So then
Sure.
that's a way of showing that we're implementing that. And that was also something that someone wrote at the community meeting last night under opportunities, as city, Soldovia Village Tribe and Soldovia Native Association get together, make things happen and do what they said for the betterment of the people living here. So that's a way of showing how we're bringing in what people shared last night with the regional priorities and et cetera.
Okay. And then number 2, under medium priority. What was it that Jen said?
Councilmember Swick suggested to explore housing options.
Yes, I think that's a big one. That needs to go on here for sure. So we could make that number 2. Again, I don't know how you want to think about how we could develop housing, affordable housing for the community, whether we do it or whether we try to find a partner to help. I don't know how you want to word that, but somehow incorporate all that in there.
I think it might be best to word it that our goal is to be working on the plan, since it's so in the air how we want that to happen. We don't have a plan yet. That's a great goal, I think, going into this year, especially as we talked about that it might not be the year that everything gets implemented with said plan, but that step 1 would be creating that plan.
Yeah, develop a plan for
Yes.
affordable housing. Yeah.
So do you want to do something like lump 2.0? So we have the land use
So-
management plan
so-
and then
Yes, that,
You could,
Scary, that's Councilmember Sweat. That's exactly what I meant about the second phase of the land management use plan. That could be one part of that.
okay, that could go underneath that then.
so it could be
Well-
lump 2.0 with the focus on affordable housing. So
Being
that's
first,
part.
then we could choose what's
Okay.
next, whatever that may be.
Okay, that sounds good. Everybody agree? Okay.
Yes.
And then we move value added building to number 3.
And so with lump 2.0, I'm sorry, I can't help myself. If you don't mind a suggestion, that I agree, the affordable housing piece, but also something that was discussed beforehand isn't just wetlands management.
Yeah.
And parks management. And maybe not all those will happen at once, but maybe those can be asterisks below as well, just the other items that are incorporated into the lump and how those are going to move forward in the future.
Well, yes, for sure, because those are all items that are going to be important. So we've got to, when we look at anything else in the land management plan, we got to look at all of it, together. So. And I know you can word it accordingly.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've got improved broadband internet capabilities / communication as under medium priorities. That's number 1
In partnership with.
in
SVT.
partnership with SVT.
Yep.
Number 2 is what we just said about lump and affordable housing. And then number 3 will be the value added plant.
Councilmember Sweat,
Yes,
one comment. Did the city manager, did you say that we had an expression of interest from, that we'd received one from somebody?
No, that's.
Oh,
it's-
okay, I misunderstood you.
That would be
Okay.
very exciting.
Yeah, right.
Wishful thinking.
But council first has to give their blessing.
Okay, well,
of
I
the-
misunderstood it.
Yeah.
Okay,
So Monday you'll
So-
give your blessing, and then I've even already asked Diane to get 4 lease signs that we can put on the
Okay.
building, and
I guess I was dreaming as usual. Okay, so we're still moving forward then on submitting that or posting that.
and then just for clarity's sake, when because it just says value added building. Do you want to make it a little bit more specific, like secure a tenant for the value added building or
Secure a tenant or, well, I guess that would be our first priority. If we couldn't secure a tenant, then I guess that's another conversation of what do we do with it then,
okay.
I
Could,
guess.
could we word it, secure a positive outcome for the future of that building? Meaning lease it or sell it.
Hey, that's a good way to put it. I
I'm
guess.
just throwing it out there. I don't know what everybody else thinks online, but I mean, there needs to be something more than just the 3
Well, that would
words.
leave it open for if
Right.
lots of things. I mean, if we
Right.
couldn't get a tenant, obviously, then what are we gonna do with it? We've got to decide something, or we're gonna be talking about this for another 10 years.
Right.
So I think the time has come for us to move forward with it like we're doing, and to actually, it's coming down to making a decision. Because if we can't secure a tenant, then we need to decide what else to do with it. So however you want to word that. Okay, everybody in agreement with all that so far?
Yeah, what do you think, Ashley?
Yes.
Okay. Moving on to, and I have forgotten, I think, but I will get to the public after we do all the priorities. Okay. So now we're to the small priorities. What do we want as number 1? I think we should move number 3 to number 1. For sure. Because that's, again, an important thing that we have to deal with for the community. And then I don't know about 2 and 3, but anyway, those are my thoughts. Anybody have any comments?
I do. Councilmember Sweat.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I would agree with her that the Tustamina is a priority. I'm assuming that the broadband would be gone from the small priority, correct?
Yes, it's moved up to the medium.
Right. And, as of a discussion last night, I think there is an issue in the community that we really, that might fit here. I don't know, I'm new, but I think maybe there is a significant number of new people in town. And a lot of them are young families with able-bodied men in those families that might be able to assist or might be willing to volunteer with our local fire department. And I'd like to see something happen there to get more support for the local fire department itself so that somebody responds when we have an incident. I'm not referring to so much, I know there's a lot of work that needs to be done in a lot of different places, but I think we need more local volunteers, and they may not be available. But with so many of our young couples, they're either working seasonally. I've actually, for several years now, tried to encourage my son to join the fire department, but with his travel, he's only here half the month, but I still think he's missing an opportunity. And so I'd like to see something about maybe some type of campaign to see if we can't help the fire department get some more active, younger members on the fire department.
I'd like to respond to that, unless you do, Jennifer. Are you there? Oh, she must be gone. We do
Here,
have, oh, yeah.
I'm here. Sorry.
Okay,
Um,
you might want to let John know about the periodic recruitment stuff that we have going on.
Yeah, so the EMS is actually doing pretty great right now because Jan we did that EMT course. And I have a full roster of dispatchers, so that those are actually doing really well. The fire department is what's struggling. We don't have a chief right now. I think we're waiting to see what happens with the VPSO, and hopefully that will,
Right.
I don't want to say solve our problems, but really help the department situation. We have a department wide training, I guess, right after Thanksgiving, where we're going to try and get as many people as we can together and kind of talk about the future. So, I mean, I understand this is definitely a priority. I don't know what us as a council can do so much for it to be listed as one of our priorities. I don't know. There is forward movement in the department, and hopefully that will keep going. Financially, we're actually doing pretty well. We've talked about starting up the Fireman's Ball again and trying to engage the community more that way. But again, we had a lot more success with that when we had something specific we were raising money for. When we hosted the one for the truck, it was a lot easier to tell people we're raising money for this, something tangible that they could understand. It wasn't just throwing it in our coffers for where's it going. I mean, sure, we need to buy EpiPens and things like that and stock the ambulance, but to host some kind of big community event like that, it was really easy to have a specific goal in mind. And right now we don't, I guess. But so I'm not opposed to having this listed. It's just that not entirely sure what we can do as a council to move forward towards that goal. And I don't know if Bobby, you have anything else since you're on the board
Well,
too, but.
I just wanted to make a comment, I'm John, I'm sure you've been here long enough to figure this out. There are several entities in town here that require way more than just run-of-the-mill volunteering. Fire chief being one of them. And I think that's been a problem with attempting to get a new fire chief. Yeah, I certainly don't know how to solve that problem, other than paying, which of course we can't afford to do. So I don't really know how to change some of those things because, yeah, people volunteer, but then they get tired of volunteering.
I've been there.
So I've been there too. I'm there right now. I mean, there's certain things I like to do and I will continue to do them, but like another example is our library director. There's a lot more that goes into that than just plain old volunteering. And yeah, it's hard to figure out what to do for some of those positions.
Councilmember
So-
Sweat.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question for Jennifer. Did you hear my remarks, all of it, Jennifer, or were you gone?
No, yeah, I heard most of it. I know you were talking about trying to, get younger volunteers involved. Is that the gist of what your concern is?
Well, I wasn't at all referring to the EMS or any of that. I was referring to maybe see if we couldn't acquire additional help for the fire department. And my suggestion really, my thoughts really is maybe we could, through our website and our announcements, maybe continue to let the community know that we're looking for a fire chief, and we're looking for volunteers for the fire department that are willing to get trained. And I certainly wasn't passing. It's basically from discussions that we had last night at the meeting and the recent attendance to the last couple of fire calls. I don't know anything about it other than that. And I just think the city has a role to at least, make sure that the postings stay online and we continue to look. That's all I had.
Well, we could put out a few new postings, in regards to that, looking for firefighters and to, draw in some of those newer members of the community. Maybe update the city's website to address that issue. I don't know.
Chair Sweat, can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
So a small priority option, because we're just, throwing things out there, and council can list as many as you want right now. And then we can go back and select the top 3. But perhaps one could be the city determining ways to support the fire department and improve, city fire department relations. That could be a small priority. That would be very accomplishable. That could totally happen within a year or less. It'd be great for the next city manager to get an invite from the fire department or EMS to, attend the board meeting and get to meet people, and maybe more ideas will happen that way. But I think that is a worthwhile small priority for the council to consider is how can the city help support the fire department and not only securing a fire chief, but just general operations.
Right. I just have one more comment, if that's okay, Council Member Sweat.
Yes, go ahead.
I am in agreement with Jennifer that the thought of waiting to see what happens with the new VPSOs,
It could change things a little
that's
bit.
absolutely right on track. I'm referring to in the trenches workers, people that show up to a fire and emergency response, active members that are able to show up,
Chair Sweat, can I throw out a suggestion?
Yes.
Not to detract from the need for volunteers on the fire department roster. But it does bring to mind that we did spend some time this last year trying to just support, have some proclamations, some awareness for the different volunteerism that happens in our community, because there's a lot. The cemetery right now has a very small dedicated group of people that volunteer, but it's becoming less and less every year. Our parks are less and less every year of that volunteerism. So if it didn't detract too much from that goal that you have, which is I think a worthy goal, maybe a priority is just how can the city lend more support to volunteerism in the community, and having those different the different areas really listed. So it can be cemetery, SVFD, parks, and just overall. And then we can use that effort in our Facebook campaigning and our website, and just trying to figure out resources and things that we can continue to do throughout the year to help support those groups. Seldovia Arts Council, we're trying to be more involved there. Chamber of Commerce, just how can the city have just a little bit more of a backbone and helping support those different organizations?
Okay, so under small priority, then we want to move number 3, which is continued AMHS advocacy and testimony, and continued to just, be on top of the ferry, the scheduling, just making sure that we're not overlooked, however you want to word that.
I think,
Or leave it the way it is. I don't know.
As a suggestion, Council Member Sweat, I think if council can have further discussion and decide what the priorities are for this section and then where it goes, Depending on what they decide for that last priority, but that's up to you guys to have that discussion of where things are gonna go.
To do what now?
I think that there's still discussion happening about what the priorities themselves are gonna be, so that might help to have a determination of what the priorities are before you determine where they're going, but that's just a suggestion.
Oh, okay. So does anybody else have any other ideas for the small priorities they want to comment on? Okay, well, doesn't seem like it.
I do have one comment.
Okay.
I agree with you, Madam Clerk, about the other priorities. I think they should be included as well. I just believe that the precedence or the urgency would be our emergency services should be priority one as a small. I think all of the organizations were struggling everywhere, but emergency services for our community is a big issue. So, all I was looking for was just to keep awareness there that we're constantly looking for help. And I'm behind the VPSO and all of it. I just think the emergency services, meaning the fire department and whatever else they do there, is a priority.
Okay, so do we have any more ideas for the small priorities? Okay, then. Well, I still think the ferry advocacy needs to be number one, because that, if we don't have that, we don't have
I
anything.
support that, Bobby.
And then number two could be the EMS, fire. However you want to word that. Does that sound?
I have no issue with the ferry being number one, and maybe a goal might be to obtain a fire chief in the next year. And additional volunteers for the fire department, or however you want to word it there, and the other organizations, the other volunteer organizations.
Yeah, do you want to combine that all into one, Heidi, or?
Yes, however that works for you language wise, it could be obtain fire chief and more volunteer support
Maybe getting
for the year.
obtaining a fire chief and more members could go an asterisk underneath that or something.
Yeah.
Something. Yeah.
Obtaining a fire chief for the in the coming year.
You could
More
throw in
members.
like improving department operations or something like that. So it
Yeah,
encompasses volunteers and training and,
Right.
all that good stuff. Getting the equipment out that's probably collecting dust in the department somewhere.
I'm sorry, so that was improving department what?
Just
So, like,
operations.
Operations, yep, okay.
To obtain the fire chief in the coming year and improve department operations.
I
whatever
think it
Jennifer-
was improving
Jen
department
said.
relations, and then under that would be obtain the fire chief,
Yeah.
more
Okay.
members, 'cause
I see.
there's- Is that
I'm-
what you were trying to say, Councilmember Swick? That the overall would be improving department operations, and then below that would be like the fire chief, more membership.
Yeah, I mean, we could word it however, but I mean, obviously fire chief is a priority, because that everything will hopefully fall in line after we have a chief to facilitate some things.
Hey, Jen, I have maybe, it's a conversation for another day, but maybe we could think too, for the fire chief, a couple of extra incentives we could be thinking about maybe for that particular position. Do you think maybe
Right, were you
that help?
in on our last meeting? Do you remember? the last one we even had. And
I
we
probably
talked,
I probably don't remember, but go ahead.
yeah, we had talked about implementing some kind of incentive program for the volunteers. Just how we are going to structure that so it's fair and enticing, I guess.
Yeah, I do remember that. I do think though, something extra for the fire chief too, because there's a lot for them to do, like I said.
Yeah.
So-
There, yeah, I mean, we also
that-
talked about
Yeah, that
restructuring
conversation
the-
can be for another day for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, so since nobody came up with anything new for the small priorities, do we want to continue to keep retaining and promoting Saldovia's small town charm? Do we want to move that to number 3 under the small priority? Anyone?
Yeah, I was waiting.
Go ahead, John.
I have some thoughts on that. I was hoping to have a conversation with the mayor about it. Before I think I've shared it with Rachel in the past. But it was interesting this summer watching the activities of the community and the resources or the business related activities that I seen and the business opportunities. And we had several really good weekends, but I can't help but wonder, we put so much into 4th of July. You know, 4th of July is a great event. It's brought a lot of people to our community. People come to visit. People, after seeing that event, come and stay here, decide to move here. You know, I would like to see us spread that out through the summer a little bit more, and how we might be able to promote those activities. Those activities, like the weddings that the boardwalk have done, also brings a lot of revenue to this community. And I just wonder how we could maybe market ourselves again on a community level, how we might be able to market ourselves. Maybe this is just an idea, but I'm going to throw it out there. Maybe instead of, maybe Seldovia could become a business event capital of Alaska, where, if you have an event with 50 people, maybe this is the place to come. Or you have an event with 100 people or a wedding, maybe this is the place to come. I don't know. I'm just curious if anybody else has any thoughts. I know there was several good weekends, but I'd like to see us find a replacement for the last weekend of the year and some of the other events that have went away. Maybe we will find some replacement. I realize that's more the chamber's responsibility, but maybe that's something we could work on together.
Well, I'll make a comment, because I think that's something you could certainly bring to the chamber, that they could help promote, because as you very well know, what summers are like here without much help.
Councilmember Sweat, I'm not looking for, I'm just throwing out ideas. That's what the purpose of this session is today. I'm not trying to change anything here. It's just ideas.
Yeah, no, and I'm saying, I think it's something you could discuss with the chamber, and see where they stand on that. But, and I think
I'm discussing it here.
it's a great idea, but where are you going to find all the people to help you do all this?
It was a suggestion, and I don't appreciate the tone of this at all.
Okay, well, sorry if you feel that way, but I'm not. I don't think I am, but. Okay, well, anyway, so where do we want to stand here on the small priorities?
So for small priorities, it sounds like we have as number 1, continued AMHS advocacy Testamina replacement vessel. Number 2, would be obtain a fire chief and more volunteer membership or overall improvement of department operations. And then number 3, there is still the retaining and promoting Soldovia's small town charm, but it sounds like there's a request to maybe expand on that or make that a little bit more centralized to the idea of marketing events throughout the summer. So it could be retaining and promoting Soldovia's small town charm, promoting and marketing Soldovia's events, summer events, or yeah, I'm not sure what, did you have a language specific for that?
Councilmember
Councilman
Sweat, may I address the clerk?
Do what?
May I address the
Oh, yeah,
clerk?
go ahead.
Okay, I was merely suggesting
Mhm.
that as being an idea, and as I mentioned in the first part of my conversation was I wanted to have a conversation with the mayor about that before I
Mhm.
brought it to the council. I just think that as a community, we could do a better job at dividing out so that we have more
Mhm,
participation through the whole summer and what the city's role is in that.
mhm,
Okay, and that's all I'm saying here. And because I know that several of us had employees hired here that we were sending home in August because there wasn't enough work for them. And it all spells tax revenue for the city.
mhm.
If we don't have the visitors, we don't have the revenue.
Okay, so do you want her to include that with retaining and promoting Saldovia Small Town Charm?
I'd like to hear what some of the other council members have to say.
Okay, does anybody else have any thoughts?
I think it's important to have, as we kind of talked about on some of the earlier items, having something that's specific. So whether it's what Councilman Kennedy brought up, or if we find something else, but so because small town charm and how we retain and promote that, there's not the how in there. There's not that specific, like, how do we, that check mark. And I do agree. I think that's a great place, because when I think of a small town, and part of what brought me here was seeing all of those, different events and celebrations that feel so different when you're in a small town compared to a large place, because people come and they really feel special and part of everything. And the ones that I was a part of this summer were amazing. And as Councilmember Sweat said, it does take, who's going to help with that, and that would be part of our job in the planning of doing that. But if that's an idea that we all go, oh, that could be a great place, I like having that as a specific check mark that we can actually work towards.
Okay, thank you. So I'm not sure how we want to word number 3 then. Do you have an idea on how you want to word number 3?
Chair Sweat, I think that if the city keeps in the vein of retaining small town charm and or retaining and promoting Soldovia small town charm, what if it's something like, to make it more specific, the city develops materials or information that can be shared with partnering organizations like the Chamber or the Arts Council. So that way it's like we're giving information that will help with the promotion, if that makes sense, because that's really their jam. And then we can figure out ways we can help in the planning effort. So for example, I was at the Chamber meeting last week or the week before, and something that was brought up was how, there's like 3 separate beautification committees within the town. There's the council beautification committee, which was that part of this priority. Then there's the city's Parks and Rec committee, but it's defunct. There isn't really, I mean, Susie Stranik, I think, volunteers and puts effort into it, but I don't know how many members that has. And then there's the chamber beautification committee. So one of the things that was discussed as part of that chamber meeting was, how can we come together and talk about beautifying our public spaces when we don't really have like that organization of like who's doing what and who gets to make improvements in what spaces. And so they were like, hey, the city should have a meeting where we have these public spaces and we say, these are the areas that are available to make improvements on, and what's already going on in the community and how can we invite more people in. So I could see something similar when we think about Soldovia from a business perspective or trying to get more events in. What resources does the city have that we can let other people know about so that they can help promote Soldovia? So like something that we did with the chamber walking map that hadn't been on there was now there's a little asterisk for the Lake Susan Pavilion, and we added a few more pieces of information that hadn't been reflected before. So if I were to try to make a combination recommendation for making that more specific, that as a way that the city can help, it's, directing people to our resources or compiling our resources in such a way where it's encouraging for someone to think about coming to Soldovia for a business. And, typically cities will partner with their Chamber of Commerce's to do that. So like the city of Homer gives a significant amount of money to the Homer Chamber of Commerce, and they, on behalf of the city, market. So I know that because resources are limited at the city, maybe what we do is just provide the information, or we think of ways of encouraging the use of the city properties or our resources to generate the events or something like that. I don't know if that helps.
Maybe retaining and promoting Soldovia's small town charm by providing support to encourage visitors to Soldovia through partnerships and local organizations.
How's that, John?
I just wish we had more participation, and I wish that people had the opportunity to speak freely without criticism. That's all I had tonight.
Okay, why don't you word it that way, Heidi? And then we can always change it if we want.
Or it can be left, it's up to the council, but it can be left until the next discussion, and we can provide this information that this was discussed. We can put an asterisk by it or highlight it and say, there was discussion on it, but it hasn't been fully developed yet, and then have further discussion.
This is a hard one too. We want to get him here and have him stay. That's the bottom line. You want to promote the town and get the visitors and want them coming back and want them moving here. It's the dream. Do we have to, and I understand where you're actually saying, we need to have specific things that we can say, yes, we accomplished that, but is it bad to leave it vague and say that we're just trying to promote Soldovia? Do we have to say that we're partnering with these organizations? I guess we could, maybe it looks better on paper, but can't we interpret that as we will with everything that we're doing? Instead of restricting it to that specific wording. I don't know. I get the idea we're after, but I don't know if we need to be hung up so much on being so specific on the paperwork of it. I don't know. Just my thoughts. This is our last one, correct? We're talking about small number 3.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, it's funny that such a big concept is our smallest one on here, but I mean, I understand, because what we're trying to figure out how we can accomplish or what we can do towards that big goal. Yeah, maybe I just talked around in circles. I don't know.
Yeah, that sounds good, Councilmember Swick, because also continued AMHS advocacy / Testamina replacement vessel, that's also a little bit less specific and more general. And it's more like, I guess the more specific it is, the more it helps staff see what the council would like. So like, I mean, when I look at that retaining and promoting Seldovia small town charm, and I think about the feedback that we got from the public at last night's meeting, there was a lot of concern about junk or like derelict properties, or, the place doesn't look as nice as it could be kind of feedback. And so, I mean, that could be something that falls underneath that. So keeping it general is great, because then it's like, okay, we have this feedback from the public. Here's different ways that we can tackle that. And then if Councilmember Kennedy, like if there's a specific idea there, then we could have a work session just on that. Like maybe we do keep it general here. And then in the future, we can have a work session specific to, okay, what exactly does this mean? It's one of our priorities. What are the different ways we can tackle it from like a business perspective, resident perspective, visitor perspective? And, maybe it just is a reminder that we need that broader conversation in the future.
Okay. So we've got our small priorities, correct?
Yeah, mission accomplished.
Okay.
And the one thing that is missing, but maybe because we've already been at it for a little bit, if we're going to talk about this again in the future, we need to identify the council champions for the priorities. And because not everyone's here, maybe this is when we take it back to the council and say, okay, this is what we came up with. How does this look? And if this looks great to everybody, people need to raise some hands to help, because then that gives staff permission to reach out to specific members to help with those topics.
So maybe that could be discussed at not this council meeting, but the next one. Okay. All righty, well, that concludes that part. And now, do we have anybody from the public that wishes to make comments?
Well, thank you. I'm David Chambers, the medical director for EMS, and I just want to say I want to thank you for making the emergency services a priority on your list. I think it's important that be a priority and be examined and looked at. I think talking about volunteers, it has to do with making the service stable and preventing burnout. The more volunteers you have and the more training you have, the happier people are, and they don't get burned out. So you don't have a high turnover of personnel. Unfortunately, from an EMS standpoint, we lost 3 of our senior volunteers. The chief was a paramedic and responded to greater than 50% of the calls. His wife is a critical care RN, and we developed specific protocols for her to respond to calls within her scope of care as a nurse. And she responded to greater than 50% of the protocol of the tickets. And then we also had a paramedic that I think I was just informed moved to Hawaii, which I can't blame her for doing that.
No, she hasn't yet.
Marilyn, yeah. So
She's still here.
anyway, we lost 3 of our senior top level medics, which kind of puts a stress on everybody else. From an EMS standpoint, there's actually different levels of training. We have an ETT or emergency trauma technician. We have an EMT1, EMT2, EMT3, and then advanced paramedic. And with each advanced level, you get to do more. You have a higher level of training, you have more responsibility, but more importantly, from an EMS standpoint, you can do more. You know, like an EMT3 can shock people. They can use a defibrillator. They can give drugs. They can pace the heart if they need to. And as of right now, we have 2 EMT3s and we have, I think, 5 EMT1s. And that's your service. Okay, those are the people who answer all the calls. And if you look at the numbers, 2 people are responding to greater than 90% of the calls. So you've got a great service and people are getting taken care of. And I've looked at the trip tickets and it's high quality medicine. I mean, we're not missing anything on what the care we're providing, but you've essentially got 5 or 6 people running the service. And that's going to work for a short period of time, but people are going to get burned out. And so that's why I think volunteers are very important. You have to continue to build your service. You have to continue to have new volunteers, and that makes people less likely to get burned out and have to carry the whole load. Concerning training, I think the more training you have, the better the service is, the more qualified they are to treat patients and the happier they are. Concerning that, I think we need to expand our training, okay? And the reason why I say that is 2 things. One is SVT has a volunteer service out the road, okay? We need to start looking at combined training. Okay, that would be one way to working with the village tribe to help training. So I think one thing we need to do down the road is talk to SVT and say, how can we combine our training? You know, how can we train the whole group of EMS and firefighters? The second thing is that EMS, police, EMS, and firefighters are a community. It's kind of like a fraternity. It's a fellowship. Well, many times I think people feel isolated here in Seldovia simply because there's no community. I mean, it's just those 5 EMS people. It's just the firefighters. So I think somehow we have to create that community. And I'm kind of hearing through the grapevine that the Homer Fire and Rescue is one of the best departments in Alaska. Well, let's reach out to them, okay? Let's contact Homer and say, how can we combine training? You know, how can you teach us? How can we form that community? And I think that would move things forward, both by combining Homer, SVT, or emergency services. I guess the last thing I'd like to say is just thank you to the volunteers. I mean, the reason why the EMS service works here is not because of me as medical director and protocols, it's because of the volunteers. And we've got some of the greatest volunteers that I've ever worked with over about 40 years of medicine. For example, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, we had one call where we had to stay on scene for a long time, or we actually had to spend greater than 8 hours on scene. We have a policy that if you stay on scene, the ambulance has to stay on scene too, in case you have a transport or in case we need more equipment. And we had to stay on scene because we couldn't fly. The weather was so bad, we had to wait. Well, I saw a volunteer sit in an ambulance and sleep and stayed there for 8 hours. Okay, he was our driver. And I just, I mean, you don't see that. I mean, a volunteer spent 8 hours sitting in an ambulance in somebody's driveway, waiting for a transfer. And so I think that's what we have is priceless, is the people who do that. And we just need to support them. I mean, me as medical director, I need to support them with education, training, feedback, whatever I need to do. As a community, we need to support them. And as a council, we need to support them. And I just want to say thank you for making that a priority. That's it.
Thank you, Dr. Chambers. Anybody else from the public, Heidi?
I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time, Madam Chair.
Okay. All right, well, that will pretty much conclude our meeting then, unless Rachel or Heidi, you have anything else to add?
Just a thank you to the council for hanging in there, because this is an important opportunity for the council to not only strategize and ask questions, but also dream of things and just throw things out there and see what's possible. And I know it's hard because sometimes there's things we want to accomplish, but we don't know how to make it happen, or there's just not the resources to make it happen. But it's still such an important exercise every year of the body, not just, getting the information from staff, but also thinking about, hey, what is it that we want to do? And, this is just this year, but I mean, there's no reason why this exercise couldn't be, when you're setting your larger priorities of, man, we know this is going to take 2 years, but it's so important. Let's just put it on there because we want to show the community where we're going. So thank you for doing it, and more time in meetings and preparation, but so worth it.
Okay, so does anybody have any comments? John? Ashley? She must not be able to hear us. Jen, do you have any comments?
No, I think we've said enough.
Okay. Harmony, do you have any comments? I see you're back.
Sorry about that. I think I'll have to agree with Jen.
Okay. Well, I just want to say, I want to apologize to John if you don't think I conducted myself properly. Sorry about that. I didn't mean anything by it. So our next regular meeting is Monday, November 14th. And we're adjourned. What was that?
I was saying thank you to everybody.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Okay, thanks.